Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of the Beach Boys podcast. We have Brandon, we got Josiah back, and we have Nate. Glad to have you guys. And this week we are going to be doing a dive into Carl and Dennis's solo albums. We did Brian for the past couple episodes, and now we're going to get into the other two brothers, see what our thoughts are on that. I'm sure there will be plenty of hot takes for this one. And we're going to go chronological. We're going to start out with Dennis's solo album from '77, Pacific Ocean Blue. Anybody got any opening thoughts?
All things considered, 10 out of 10 album to me.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
There you go.
That's it. Well, let's move on. No.
Yeah. So I think you can see the beginnings of Pacific Ocean Blue as early as like the early 70s in terms of Dennis's composition and arrangement style. And it's almost a good thing that he hadn't released his solo album until Pacific Ocean Blue, because I think Pacific Ocean Blue is Dennis reaching his full potential at the right time to create his solo album. So with that said, the arrangements are out of sight on this album. I love how creative the drumming is and the keyboards, and Dennis even plays tuba. Lots of cool synth stuff. Hal Blaine playing drums. I mean, how much cooler can it get? As for songs that stand out to me, River Song, you can't get much better than that. That's such a spiritual song. And Dennis and Carl co-write. I also really love Dreamer. I love that bass harmonica.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah.
For the drum sound on that, Bobby Figueroa played drums on that, and they had for the drum fills, like they covered each tom-tom with like towels, so that's why it has that real flat sound. But I'd say my favorite song on the album is definitely You and I. That one just
You and I is incredible.
Hits so soulfully. I love the really really interesting chords, really dissonant bass notes in the slash chords. Maybe I'll save that for the next chord episode. But, I think as far as Dennis's songwriting goes, he had fully attained his style. His Brian has his way of writing chords, and by this point Dennis had his way of writing and performing.
Very true.
And I guess
album.
something that could be said about Dennis is he's kind of like the George Harrison of the Beach Boys, in the sense that Brian and I guess Mike kind of started out as the songwriters of the group, and then Dennis comes in with Little Bird, and you're like, okay, you can have his track every once in a while, and then he kind of morphs into this really great songwriter. And I guess it really it comes out here just like it came out with George Harrison on All Things Must Pass. Kind of, it's
that's a great point.
It's just unfortunate that Dennis's discography didn't continue to the extent that George Harrison's did, because
absolutely,
who knows what he would have. I mean, I'm happy too that this album came out before the '80s, because I feel like if it was in the early '80s as opposed to '77, the production and the overall vibe would probably be significant. Maybe not significantly, but I think it would be different.
Probably closer to Beach Boys '85.
Yeah, or and you could see the difference between this and the Carl albums. What was Carl's first one was '81, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely production-wise a big shift. I feel like that happens.
I don't know. I think that I think vocally would have been the biggest problem, because by the early '80s, Dennis was just like a frogman. But but I think that I don't know. I have a feeling that Dennis. Because, Carl's albums just sound like the most bland possible thing you could imagine, just like every other kind of late 70s, early 80s kind of soft rock album. But I think Dennis, even if he did it in something in the early 80s, kind of would have still kept his kind of own sound, because you listen to the stuff of Bamboo, and like some of that's from like the, you know, late 70s and early 80s, and that still has that Dennis kind of sound as well. So, you know.
Yeah. And to echo what you were saying about You and I too, like I love the production on that one. I think it's at Fender Rhodes that he's using in that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It reminds me that the production on that one and the production on a couple of them. I think Dreamer also uses Fender Rhodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of like Stevie Wonder, like Talking Book era production. And that's specifically with that song You and I mean, that song is just incredible. And I think that and River Song were like the two singles off of the album, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anything charted though on this album,
No.
right?
Shut up.
One super cool thing about this album is that despite it being Dennis' solo album, is how many people from the Beach Boys circle actually contributed to the album. Beach Boy wise, we've got Dennis, Carl, Bruce, and Ricky
Mike.
all. Oh yeah, and Mike.
Mike wrote
co-writing.
Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean Blues, yeah.
Yeah, right. And then as far as the Beach Boys band, you've got Joe Cheme and Earl Mankey, Billy Hinchy. You've got members of the Wrecking Crew like Hal Blaine and the Sid Sharp Strings. And you've got Dean Torrance singing backing vocals throughout. So even though it's a Dennis solo album, I think it's a cool celebration of all of the musicians in the Beach Boys circle to that point. And it's interesting. There's more like musicians from the Beach Boys circle on Pacific Ocean Blue than like Love You.
They know we're about to talk about Carl's solo albums are coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
go ahead.
just like the stuff that Nate mentioning that Dennis plays the tuba here, some of the stuff he plays on here is insane. Like he plays the harmonica, he plays violin, he plays lap steel guitar. It's like
the harmonica on Dreamer is Dennis.
It's like, where did this all come from all of a sudden? Like it's nuts.
Does Hal Blaine do all of the drums, or does Dennis drum as well on some of the tracks?
Dennis drums. Hal Blaine only drums on one song. The drumming's pretty spread out. Mike Kowalski drummed on it too. But yeah, I think Dennis, I mean, all of the guys, minus Bruce, had no like formal training. So for Dennis to become one of the iconic rock drummers in a matter of like 2 or 3 years, and then get to the point where he can write these beautiful songs on piano and, play tuba, violin, guitar, all these different instruments. It's just, I think the boys were blessed with that like amazing musical intuition where they could just pick up any instrument and make it work. Like Brian plays guitar and drums.
By the end, by the time Dennis started learning piano in whatever it was, the late 60s, early 70s, he was a much better piano player than Brian at that point. So, it's pretty crazy. But
does he play all of the piano on this album?
Yeah, all of the pianos on River Song are Dennis.
Oh, okay.
So there are other piano and key players throughout the album, but on River Song specifically, all the keys are him.
And that's the one I think is the most prominent key wise too. Like that, kind of the whole structure of the song's based around is playing. So
brings the album in right with that piano part. I love the piano on Thoughts of You also. That's a beautiful piano part. And the production too, like that part where it gets a little bit heavier and he's got that, I don't know what he's got on his voice. It either sounds like a distortion or maybe some sort of delay. You know what I'm talking about?
With the horn section.
Yeah, that's so good. I love all that too. I mean, it's similar to, I mean, it's a lot different than Pat sounds, but I think it's similar in the sense of you're seeing what Dennis can come up with when he's left to his own devices, and he can kind of experiment compositionally with anything that he wants and any sort of instrumentation, because like you said, there's all kinds of stuff going on in this album, like that horn part when that comes in over Thoughts of You. I mean, it's very surprising, but it's just like, it's so satisfying. It's just like, it just sounds like so like heartbreaking when that's just a trumpet, right? Over that part.
Yeah, very very Spectre influenced horn arrangement there, I think.
And that piano part underneath that's like a very Brian piano part. It kind of sounds like Surf's Up, like the pattern, like that chord pattern
Yeah.
he does on Surf's Up. You know, do you guys have any songs you don't like on this album?
No, actually, that's something I want to bring up. I think most albums always have at least one or two songs, but for this album, I can listen all the way through and I don't have a problem with it. Like every song's good. I guess one that I'd specifically want to shout out that I like a lot is Time. I think it's kind of really boring at first, and then I was like, it's not. I always like, this isn't great. And then the ending kicks in. I'm like, okay, this is why it's one of my favorite songs off this album, because that ending is so cool. It's so energetic.
It took a long time for me to warm up to Friday Night. At first I was turned off by the White Punks Play Tonight. It almost sounds a little like Skinhead, or like, I don't know, like, just
what it says that in the lyrics.
Yeah, and Friday Night, something, the White Punks come out tonight, something like that. So at first it gave me a bad taste in my mouth, but then when I thought about how autobiographical the album is, it could simply be referring to the Beach Boys going out and playing, because they were punk rockers in 1961, the equivalent.
Maybe using a word other than white as an adjective would have been a little more clear if you start like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I never even noticed that lyric.
Yeah.
That's a cool
but
song.
I love the song.
There's two songs that I don't dislike them, but I'm not as crazy about them as the other ones. What's Wrong? It kind of like, it's like whatever. It's to me like after like River Song is so good, and then it goes into What's Wrong, and to me that's kind of like the filler track. And then Moonshine is probably my favorite song on the whole album. I think that song is so beautiful. And then also Pacific Ocean Blues, like it's okay, but I think as a title track, like I was expecting something maybe a little bit more epic or a little bit more experimental. But it is cool. It has a cool drum groove. Do you know if Dennis is playing drums on that?
No, not on that one. I think that's
okay.
Let me check real quick. I think it's Figueroa. Yeah. But sorry, my mind just blanked. Which one were we talking about?
The Pacific Ocean Blues, the drum beat.
Oh yeah. Something that I love with that one is like the added beat in the "It's no wonder the Pacific." It's almost like he's doing 5/4.
I gotta check that out.
All right, this is where I'm gonna have to kill you, Mike, because
Virtual
Pacific Ocean Blues is actually my favorite song on the album.
So good.
It's just it's so like it's just so groovy and funky, and just it's just so much fun, and it's like this is the kind of like slip on through, I'm going your way kind of Dennis that I really that I really like, and it's just but this album in general, I've definitely warmed up to it, because when I first listened to it, I'm like, this isn't. I was probably expecting something more Beach Boysy, because it doesn't really have a Beach Boysy kind of sound. And then I listened to it a few times more, and I'm like, no, you know what? There's some really good stuff here. I mean, Moonshine is one of my favorite tracks on here. I think it's gorgeous. And I can't think of. I'm blanking on which song it is, but I like how the lyric in one of the songs is like something like she went to heaven in her car or something like that. I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's go to heaven in my car. That's kind of cool,
That little connection.
But yeah, so it's good stuff on here, definitely.
I think one area where I do differ sometimes with Beach Boys fans is like a lot of the more groovy songs. I mean, I like them, but I don't resonate with them as much. I like, even with this album, like I always am more attracted to like the ballads and like songs like Moonshine and Thoughts of You and Time. Even like when we had that episode with our least favorite songs, I said I don't like All I Want to Do. Like those are kind of like the songs where like they're okay, but like I just feel like there's so many songs like that already. Like I really like the songs that to me sound more like they're just different. You know what I mean? They're very unique sounding. So that like sometimes when I hear just kind of like more of like a straight ahead, like kind of rocky kind of groove, like it doesn't excite me as much as some of the other choices. And we'll get much more into that when we talk about Carl's albums because there's a lot of that on there.
I think
But to be
what's
fair, I
wrong.
mean, not.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. I was just gonna say, to be fair, I'm not comparing Dennis's album to Carl's. Go ahead, Nate.
I think what's wrong could have fit in like. Oh my God, my chair just fell. I have one of those chairs. Anyway, I think what's wrong could have fit in fabulously on like 15 Big Ones. Not sure if it had been written by then, but in a hypothetical world, I think that song would have fit perfectly on that album. Because, you know, the theme of the album is basically rock and roll, you know, and what's wrong with rock and roll?
Could have used it.
So Nate, your favorite on here, you said is River Song or Dreamer?
It's so hard for me to name a favorite. I think I said You and I, but now that I'm asked a second time, I'm gonna go with River Song.
How about you, Josiah? You have a favorite on here?
Oh gosh, it's hard to pick. Let me look through them real quick. As I said, I like Time, but I don't think that's my favorite because I don't like the first half as much like the second half. I don't know how people feel about this. I like End of the Show a lot.
Me too.
It might be my favorite, to be perfectly honest. It kind of reminds me of Pacific Coast Highway and kind of the way it ends. I mean, Pacific Coast Highway is Pacific Coast Highway the ending track on?
Summer's Gone.
Okay, yeah, no, but it has the same vibe to me as that. It has that kind of like let down after, you know, this album. You know, I don't know, love it. So that's probably my
Summer's
pick.
Gone from That's Why God Made the Radio?
Yeah. I was just saying it kind of has that same letdown ending as that and Pacific Coast Highway. You know, those two kind of let that album down, just like this song lets this album down. No, I like slow endings of albums. I always hate when they ended on a banger sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the Only With You on Pacific Ocean Blue than the one on Holland.
Yeah, same.
I like Carl's voice on it better, but I like the harmonies they added. I love hearing Dean Torrance up top in that falsetto. It gives it that classic Beach Boy sound that's almost kind of missing from the Holland version.
And do you know if you can you get this on vinyl?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like really rare, or is it just common to find?
It's not like common, but it's not like, you know,
because
trying to get like adult child.
You'd have better luck online.
Right, of course.
Because they reissued it in 2008 with all the bamboo stuff, like a double kind of. They just threw it all together. So.
And I have heard a lot of people say that Dennis Wilson is kind of the unsung hero or like the secret weapon of the Beach Boys, and I think this album proves that. You know, it really is an incredible album. And for only having one album in his solo discography, I mean, I don't think it could get much better than this.
Yeah, so true.
Is that it?
It also definitely cements him over Carl as well. I don't know, at least in my hierarchy, I put Dennis over Carl. You know, if not for his contributions for the actual band, you know, I guess but for his contributions solo album wise, it's such a clear difference. Carl has his moments, but it's not even in the same ballpark, not even the same sport.
Nate, why don't you start us out for the Carl one? Because I know you're going to have the most positive stuff to say. So
yes,
bring us in.
Alrighty.
The self-titled 81 album.
So I think the arrangements on this one are mostly pretty lacking. Even the rock ones would have benefited from a more wall of sound, maybe Brian influenced type of track. As we were saying, the rock ones sound pretty lacking and pretty generic.
Yeah.
However, with all that said, Hurry Love, I absolutely love. I think it's a beautiful song.
I do too.
Um,
It reminds me of George
the
Harrison. I love hearing him do the slide
Yeah,
guitar over that chorus. I love that song.
exactly. And Heaven is totally sublime. Um, totally could have been a great Beach Boy number. Um, and then I'd say the only other one that's really notable to me is the Grammy, just because I love the guitars and the vocals, um, pretty much the arrangement overall, but the song itself doesn't really do much for me. But the guitars make up for it.
I
Mhm.
definitely think this album is more passable than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
See,
I
I agree.
I think Youngblood's better, but
Really?
we'll get to
Wow.
I
that.
think
I can't wait to
Youngblood
get into
has
this.
the best song, but I think this album is just better as a whole.
Okay.
I don't know. This album doesn't insult me, and Youngblood's insults me. So I guess this one's passable. I don't think there's any ones that for me are like, wow, I'd listen to this, on a regular basis. Bright Lights, I don't find terrible. I think it's kind of a cool song. Same with Hold Me, and it seems so long ago could be cool, but it just drags on far too long for its own good. So
Hold Me almost kind of reminds me of like a worse version of Do It Again, like a really corny
Yeah.
Do It Again kind of.
yeah, I can definitely see that.
For me, I listened to both of his albums 3 times, believe it or not, just to really see what I
Jeez.
thought of it. And I will say that I thought the self-titled album was not good at first, and then when I listened to it a second time, I actually did like it a lot more. I really don't like the first side at all, but I think the second side has a couple of good moments. I think Hurry Love is probably my favorite. Heaven is good, and I think Seems So Long Ago is not a bad closer. And one of the things that's really interesting to me about Seems So Long Ago is you look at the lyrics and he's like reflecting on his childhood, and he's bringing it all up in like such a positive light, which it kind of is confusing to me, because you hear about like Brian's stories and then you hear this song and you're like, all right, is there a disconnect with what they experienced? Are they not on the same page in
I
terms of
doubt
that?
it. I think Carl received a lot of the abuse, probably less physical and more verbal. I think writing a song about like your childhood in a positive light is just Carl doing like the more Beach Boy type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like in 1963 the Beach Boys were singing about getting beaten.
Sorry, that's kind of a
That'd be
dark thing to laugh at. But.
That'd be well. I'm just picturing like surf rock like music with like these really dark lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Can you imagine?
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Brandon?
I was just gonna. I feel like Carl maybe like kind of would have, knowing you see how he speaks in interviews and how he acts and stuff. I feel like Carl probably would have just like kept to himself and like been really quiet throughout his childhood a lot. Like when it came to Murray, just kind of distanced himself, whereas Brian and especially Dennis seem to have kind of fought Murray a bit more on stuff. So that probably
especially Dennis. That seems such a Dennis. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Carl, I was still like very respectful of his dad, like in talking about him for the rest of his life. He acknowledged the abuse, obviously, but almost like forgave him or like gave him like wiggle room. You know what I mean? Like just being how Carl is. I think like he was the type of guy to try to see the best in people.
Mm-hmm.
So that could maybe be, just his personality. Maybe not a Beach Boy thing, but just him wanting to be positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, now, Carl Wilson, 1981. Okay, so we almost have a kind of today thing going on with the A side and B side here, with the more up tempo stuff being on the first side, and then you got the ballads on the second side, which I literally just realized when I looked at the track list like 5 minutes ago. I'm like, hey, there you go. But yeah, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is so bland and generic. I can't believe it. It's especially kind of frustrating because you've got Carl going in the early 80s, like or really throughout the 70s into the 80s, going, I'm sick of doing, this kind of, throwback kind of stuff. I want to, expand and do things more creative and musically different and stuff like that. And then he leaves the Beach Boys and it's like, all right, Carl, here's your chance to do that. And then he makes music that is more bland than what the Beach Boys were making. And it's like, well, what happened? Like, what was the point of even leaving if this is the kind of music you're going to make? Like, it's just, but anyway, I mean, Heaven, most of Carl's solo songs are like the best thing you can say, and sometimes the only good thing you can say is that, oh, well, that song has a nice Carl vocal. Oh, listen to Carl's vocals on this song. They're really nice, aren't they? And that's pretty much it on a lot of them. I think Bright Lights is kind of catchy and fun. Those long nights, those bright lights.
Oh, I went opposite order, yeah.
But that's kind of, and What You Gonna Do About Me is okay. I think Heaven's decent. I mean, I used to like Heaven quite a bit. It's kind of lowered a little bit for me because I just kind of see another nice Carl vocal over the song really being anything that's special or memorable. But it's nice. So, but overall, nothing I'd ever listen to outside of having to for this.
Right.
I actually have a theory on how you were saying like how Carl was fed up with making like generic throwback music and then did exactly that with his solo albums.
Yeah.
So with both of his solo albums sounding that way, and then the Becky Lamb Wilson album sounding that way, and his contributions to Light Album and 85, it almost makes me feel like, in a weird way, despite saying otherwise, Carl must have wanted to make stuff that ultimately sounded
like
generic.
Yeah, it really seems like that. And look, it might be the his collaborators to what's her name, Myrna Smith.
Yep.
And Gregory Cushing,
Murray.
his name?
Cushing
Cushing Murray. Yeah, like maybe they just weren't, good
The right-
collaborators.
yeah.
For him.
I think and going to the next album, if we're ready.
Well, I had two more things I want to say. Just one little thing is the falsetto part in Heaven reminds me so much of 60s Brian.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Youngblood.
Yep.
I'll start off because I think I'm probably the lowest on this album. No matter how low you guys are, I hate this album. I don't think I hate it, but I hate it. Like, I just don't want to listen to it. Like, every song sounds the same except for one. There's one banger.
Oh yeah, I live next to a hospital.
What You Do to Me is awesome, and I will stand by that. But everything else on that album, I'm bored by. So it just sounds so cheesy, late 70s, early 80s, like pop, and I'm over it. I don't want to listen to it. That's it. That's all I have to say. But What You Do to Me is great. So
one thing with this album that really intrigued me, and I didn't know this until I revisited it for our episode, was that it was produced by Jeff Baxter of the Doobie Brothers. Who produced or of the Steely Dan, my bad. So with that in mind, knowing how like harmonically and jazz influenced Steely Dan is, I was anticipating it to be, or more jazz influenced, and it's obviously not on face level, but I think in traditional Beach Boys fashion, there's some really interesting stuff going on. What more? I love that. I think the arrangement is top notch, but the song is okay. But the arrangement does it for me. I wish, being the Spectre nut I am, that it had a bit more reverb and layers, but given that they were going for a straight rock and roll sound, I get it. One More Night Alone, I absolutely love that song. I think I can hear a lot of the Jeff Baxter influence there, production wise, probably arrangement wise. And Rockin' All Over the World, I love when the Beach Boys had played it in the 80s. Yeah, I have bootlegs of them playing it, and I always love how it sounds. So, I was
that a John
expecting,
Fogerty cover?
Yep. But man, the way it's done on this album kind of sucks. Like, Carl's vocals, guitar, great, like we've been saying, but man, if Carl had brought in the boys like Dennis had, and maybe gotten them to all play Rockin' All Over the World together, like how they did on stage, I think it would have been like A1.
I mean, you saying that something sucks really says something.
Yeah.
About this
Yeah,
album.
that like never happens. What?
First time for everything.
And you guys know how hard I try to like this stuff. Although in a few years, I'll probably say that I love every minute of Carl's album.
We'll have to revisit
Oh,
this episode in a
gosh.
couple of years.
Because there was a time when I hated Stars and Stripes and Somewhere in Paradise, but once I listen to it, it grows on me.
I think I could have that, except for everything but Summer of Love. I can't.
Well, for me, like,
I just can't. Like,
it's hilarious. Like, I think we
I
can
love
all agree
Yeah.
on that it's absolutely
is.
hilarious. And I'm not gonna lie, the some summer of love, like that kind of chorus, I dig it. Gives me a little nice driving
Yeah.
down the road in the
Summer
summer
of
Beach
Love.
Boy vibes.
Summer Love's incredibly catchy. Like, it's just like
Thank
it really
you.
is. It
Thank
really
you.
is a bop. Like, it really is a massive bop. And
I thought you were gonna
mean,
say masterpiece.
well, and
Yeah.
and a masterpiece, yeah. But that goes without saying. But I mean, I love that Summer of Love part. That's like the third time they'd used that hook in a song.
Yeah, right.
Which is, because they used it in Some of Your Love, and then they used it in something else as well. And it's like, come on, guys. But anyway, back to Youngblood. Youngblood, I think, is a slight improvement here. It's just got a bit more personality than Carl's first album, I think. What You Do to Me is a bit of fun. I'll agree with that. That's one of Carl's better, more fun solo songs. I think that I'm amazed that it charted. That just kind of blows my mind, having like a Carl Wilson.
Where did it
song on the
chart?
charts.
Actually, I didn't know that.
It only charted at like 80 something, so it didn't do well. But the fact that it charted
72.
Oh, 72,
That's
sorry.
better than
72,
Long Promised Road, isn't it?
And it charted
So-
in number 20 on Adult Contemporary.
Yeah, so and just seeing like the video on YouTube where like Carl's on like some show and he's like performing it, and he's got like all these like female like backup dancers on or like people on the stage with him is just hilarious. Like, oh,
Yeah,
look at
that
Carl
was so goofy.
Carl Wilson, this like big solo star. It's like, yeah, okay, come on. But but I think I really like the title track on here. Actually, I have a bit of fun with Youngblood on here because I think it's by far the most fun and creative arrangement out of like any of Carl's solo songs, because you've got the horns going and you've got like Carl doing this like, I don't know, almost kind of sleazy bar singer kind of like lounge, I don't know, like a lounge singer kind of voice. Like, it's kind of, I don't know, but it's just,
Those horns are great.
yeah, the
I
horns
forgot
in it
about that.
It's just kind of fun. And then She's Mine, I think, is a little bit of a banger. But yeah, slight improvement, but I think still not great. And maybe if Carl could have made like half a dozen more solo albums, we would have progressively got to something actually decent. But
I think the thing that I dislike about Carl's albums as opposed to Dennis's albums is I feel like when you listen to the songs that Dennis wrote for the Beach Boys, you can hear this evolution, and then I feel like it kind of builds up to the Pacific Ocean Blue album. And I feel like with Carl, like his solo stuff just takes such a left turn from the stuff he wrote for the Beach Boys. You know, I mean, if you listen to like Feel Flows and then you listen to the opening track on Youngblood, you're like, what happened?
Although I would say that the stuff he did for LA Light album is like identical to the stuff you'd find on like his
Yeah, that's
next
fair.
solo album.
And the guitar playing is really funny because I feel like at that point maybe he was checking out a lot of like the shred guitar players of the 80s because he's got that sound and he's playing some like shreddy kind of stuff on this, which is hilarious because that completely threw me off guard. I was not expecting that. And like the
He could
tone, it's
totally
like that
do
really
it.
processed, like overly produced, like 80s distortion sound. And you know, I know we've talked about this before about how I feel like there's always like a shift in production when you go from 70s albums to 80s albums. And for a while, I thought that that was just a thing that happened right from 1980. But after listening to more albums, I feel like 1983 is actually when a lot of the production started to shift because I feel like when you listen to the production on the 81 album compared to this one, it's definitely not as overly produced, I think, from 81. And even listening to some of the other people, like I've been checking out Todd Rundgren and his first two albums in the 80s, 80 and 81, it's really more kind of a 70s kind of production. But then once you get past 83, it seems like something changes. So I don't know if that's the case with most 80s albums, but I've seen that pattern with other people.
I feel that applies to like a lot of decades. Like when you listen to like, you know, Love Me Do and like the Beach Boys doing 409, you know, they're basically like 50s songs. So I feel like the past decade normally carries over until like this third or fourth year of the new decade. Because, you know, like Rubber Soul and Today clearly doesn't sound like the 50s.
Yeah.
And same with the 70s even, like All Things Must Pass. That's a straight Spectre. Sounds like it could have been produced in 66.
What is that, 73?
70.
70. Yeah.
Oh, that's 70?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you're right with what you said about things changing, Mike, from the early 80s to the mid 80s, because like I've been noticing that like you'll listen to like an album from, you know, 81, 82, 83, and then you'll get to like 85, and then it's like, oh, where did the drum machines come from all of a sudden? Like they've just like dropped them. Like mid 80s starts, okay, we need drum machines and we need like these loud bombastic synths just like blasting you in the face and like, you know, all
like
that
how
kind
Keeping
of
the
stuff.
Summer Alive basically totally sounds like a 70s album.
Yeah.
Dry drums, present bass, and then you get to Beach Boys 85 and it's samples and, you know, exactly.
Wait, before
what
when you said
saying.
1970, did you say All Things Must Pass or All This Is That?
All Things Must Pass.
Oh, is All This Is That is 73, right?
72.
72. Okay. It's funny. I just want to check real quick because Todd Rundgren was in a band called Utopia, and I think their last album was like 1983. And it's funny because he said at that point in their live concerts, the drummer wasn't even playing drums anymore. He was doing like synth stuff. And he was like, at that point, we were just like, all right, maybe we've gone a little too far. Like maybe it's just time to stop this.
Todd Rundgren slaps, by the way. I'd just like to point that out.
Yeah, I've been checking him out hard.
I was this close to getting anything on vinyl, but I didn't.
That'd be a great one.
Side little fun fact. My group, we don't have a drummer. We have like a percussionist, and then the drums are kind of like you described. Like Charlie and I do like sampled drums, like on like drum machines.
Is that by choice, or is it because it's hard to find a drummer?
It's by choice, because we really want to get that Wallace sound.
It's cool. Yeah, for a while, I was writing some. Go ahead.
We also try to incorporate like it's like 60s pop meets like modern electronic music.
Yeah, I listened
get some
to your single you had out the other day.
Oh, and the album's out now too.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
Is it on
I'll
Spotify?
send you guys the link. Yep.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely listen to it.
Thank you, man. That means the world.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
check
Yeah,
it out.
I'll
too,
give it
for
a
sure.
listen too.
We'll put a link in the bio of this or this in the bio in the description of this video. I'm so used to saying link in bio.
Yeah. I'll drop me
Most
playing
overused
chopsticks
phrase.
on the piano too. So
Yeah, go ahead and go for it. Good content, you know.
Man, I wish we had more albums to talk about.
That's it. Yeah, unfortunately, does Al and I mean, I know Mike has. Maybe next
Yeah.
episode we could do Mike's solo stuff
no,
if you want.
we're good. We're good.
Oh, I was
That'd
gonna
be-
suggest Mike. He
for
has
the
4
comedic
solo
relief.
albums.
I know
I
you
thought-
were. I know
I
you
thought
were.
we already. I thought we already didn't we already talk about that? Like the first part was going to be Carl and Dennis, and then the second part was going to
Yeah.
be Mike and Al.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Wait,
yeah.
I forget. Al does have a solo album.
Yeah, he
one.
does.
Yeah.
West Coast from California.
That'd be hilarious. Mike and Al, I'm totally down for that. That could be
Yeah.
some good
Please.
relief. It's a tense
Yeah, I'm
time. We
down.
got the election. You know, we could use some comedic relief right now.
Yeah.
No, okay, hang
Amen.
on. You guys can make fun of Mike and stuff like that all you want, but Mike has the most. Out of Mike, Al, Carl, and Dennis, Mike has the most fun, enjoyable solo career, and I mean that with all
Amen.
sincerity.
I
The only
think
reason
that-
the only reason I'm assuming it's going to be funny is because Nate, you told me that like his newer stuff is really psychedelic. So when you told me that, I have
A
no idea
couple
what
of
to
them, a
expect.
couple
Yeah, I
of
have
them.
no idea what to expect from that.
Okay, his new stuff
There's
is
a
different.
lot of auto tune on one of the albums, like T-Pain amount of auto tune. I have a theory. Cut this part out since it's a connection that I have. I have a theory that the producer sabotaged Mike's album out of spite, but I'll fill you guys in more another time. So
You can tell us
Mike's-
now. I'll cut this out if you want to say
Okay.
it right now. I'll cut it out.
So like, any of you guys watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So you know how
I
Larry
can't wait
David,
to see how this ties into Mike.
So you know how Larry David like opened up like the coffee shop, like the Spite Shop.
Yeah.
So I think so. The guy who produced Mike's Unleash the Love album, which is the one. So okay, he's the producer is a Grammy Award-winning producer, and so the album itself, the arrangements are immaculate. The performances instrumentally are perfect. The Beach Boys musical director Scott Totten did all the arrangements for the Beach Boys covers. The harmonies are all locked in.
Michael Lloyd. So you're talking about?
Yep. The arrangements are really beautiful on disc 1 on Mike's new work. So with all that said, you'd think it would be a great album, but the vocals are soaked in auto-tune. So to the point where to most people it's unlistenable. So I have a theory that Mike Love pissed off Mike Lloyd sometime during the process. So Mike Lloyd, the producer, made the arrangements, the harmonies, the drums, everything perfect except Mike Love's lead vocals. He soaked them with auto-tune. So when the album came out, no one could blame him because the arrangements are great, blah, blah, blah. But so people will say, oh, Mike must be a terrible singer. He can't sing anymore. He must need auto-tune. So it was a spite production. That's my personal theory.
You know, I got to admit, side 1 of Unleash the Love, it actually has some pretty good stuff on it. Like some of Mike's like best solo stuff. Like I mean,
Hands down.
What's it called?
Ramraj, Cool Head, Warm Heart.
Yeah,
Crescent Moon.
Cool Head, Warm Heart, and Crescent Moon, really nice. And my favorite Mike track of all time is what's that kind of he did it in the 70s on
Too Cruel?
First Love. No, not Too Cruel. The other one from First Love that he
Daybreak.
No. The other one.
The other one.
What's it called?
Oh my God.
I want. No, it's. Hang on, I gotta find it now because it's gonna bug me.
Yeah, I'm gonna look real quick.
I can't believe I can't remember.
I
It's
can't.
my
I know.
favorite.
I
How many
can't
albums
believe I
does
can't
Mike
remember
have?
it either.
All
Four.
too
Well,
many.
He has 4 plus 2. No, sorry. He has
Unreleased.
4 plus 3 unreleased albums.
So we're just gonna. So in the
Um,
episode, we would just cover the 4, right? We're not gonna listen to 7 albums for this.
Yeah.
next episode. Right?
Are you
But he's-
thinking of I Don't Want to Know?
Yeah, I don't want to know. That is my
Oh,
favorite
I
Mike
love
track.
that
I
Wait,
love
so
I Don't Wanna Know.
which Mike albums are we listening to?
Looking Back with Love,
Yes.
Unleash the Love, Reason for the Season, and
12
12 Sides
Summer.
of Summer. Get ready, my friends.
Are these
I
all on
love
Spotify?
all 4 of those. No.
Yeah, they're. Oh no, Looking
Um,
Back with Love is.
All of them except for Looking Back for Love is.
Yeah.
Say
on
those
YouTube.
again. Let me download them real quick. So, which ones are we doing?
Looking Back with Love.
I'll send you Looking Back with Love, Mike.
Oh, I have
'cause it's
there's
not on.
another Mike Love.
Send it to. Yeah, I know it's weird. Send it to the group chat, Nate.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I'll find Looking Back for Love. That's the only one. I'll remember the other 3.
And I don't want to hear
Yeah,
anything. I don't want to know anything about Al's solo album. I want to go in cold for that one.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
no hints.
Okay.
I have
I
no
haven't
idea
listened
what
to
to
Al's solo
expect with
album.
that, but I'm hopeful that it could be some pretty cool stuff. I think Al is a pretty another unsung hero of the Beach Boys.
One thing, I
Totally.
just have to say one thing with the. I'm not spoiling anything with
Okay.
the Postcard from California, but I just want to say, think of the most Al album he could possibly make, and that's what a Postcard from California is. It couldn't be more Al if it tried. So
That's the best review of it I've ever heard.
Yeah.
thank you.
That could be a good thing then. I like Al. I like Al as a person. I like him as a
Yeah,
musician. So
I
that could
agree.
be a good thing. Yeah.
Do you know that Mike has an unreleased solo album from the '90s called World Peace?
I've heard about it, but I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet.
Yeah, it's just like a full album of like Maharishi type religion-y kind of
Oh
meditation-y
shit!
stuff, and like nobody's heard it. Like it hasn't even been booted anywhere. Like nobody's heard anything from it. And I
Damn.
want to hear
Me too.
a Summer in Paradise era Mike Love solo album. That sounds amazing.
And I do TM, so that sounds right
there
up
you
my
go.
alley.
There you go.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I gotta go, guys.
Okay.
It was great seeing you, my man.
Yeah.
Good
So-
to see you. We'll
See
see
you
you at the
next
next
week or whenever.
episode.
Adios.
Whenever. All right,
Yeah.
have a good night.
Good luck, guys.
All right, so I guess there's not much more to cover with those 3 albums. So I guess next one we will cover Mike and Al. That'll be an interesting one. That'll be a fun one.
Odd, right?
So
Yeah.
thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you at the next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.